Welcome back to the Fantasy Grimoire podcast. And today, I've been looking forward to this episode all season. We have Evelyn Ash joining us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to jump straight into it. A beautifully crafted lie. This is your debut, and I would go so far as to say that it is one of the most unique approaches in fantasy I have read in a very, very long time. And through our chats, you've been clear about your nod to the Gaelic lore and inspiration. Why don't you clue the listeners into how you got to the Gaelic lore inspiration and it ended up being a beautifully crafted lie?
Okay, firstly, thank you. I really appreciate it. My great-grand, she came from Ireland, and I never really got to know her, which brought me to look a bit deeper into culture and lore and folk tales and all of that. And that's where my fascination with fairies actually started. And we are always taught from this size that it's Tinkerbell and cute and sweet and everything is glittery and perfect, and it really isn't. It's actually quite terrifying, to be honest. So I have, and now looking at the other side of the spectrum, I have had a lifelong issue with self-acceptance and depression and anxiety and all of those things. So this book was just bringing those aspects together on a path of self-healing, basically. It's a story you can follow, but if you look a bit deeper, there are themes that carry through in my path, in my journey as a person.
You will always find authors putting that spin on the stories they tell, because I recently got asked when I was in the interviewee seat, you read Legion of Pride, the interviewer asked me, even though it's like a paranormal thriller mystery kind of vibe, she's like, I'm still picking up a lot of themes of grief, in the undertones. And she's like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but does this have anything to do with your cancer journey? And I'm like, 100% yes. You're the first person that actually caught that. Even though I had flipped the story around into something completely removed from my day-to-day, I could still work those parts of myself into the story and also, as you're saying, come to this place of healing. I want to chat about ideal readers for a second. As authors, we're always talking about how do we find our ideal reader, because as we know, not every reader is for every book. If you had to describe it, who would you say your ideal reader is for a beautifully crafted lie?
Firstly, let me tell you who is not my ideal reader. My father, he asked me like 2 days ago, oh, his friend wants to read my book. And I stood there having a mini heart attack and no. my first response to him was no. Yes, this is fantasy, okay, with a very strong romance tone, and I don't want my father reading that, and I sure as hell don't want his friends reading that. My ideal reader is mostly women who enjoy fantasy and a slight escape that fantasy gives. But my ideal reader would also be somebody who has stronger emotions and has an introspective way of looking at things.
So you joke about your father. The book I'm writing right now, I don't write a lot of spice. It's light touch, for lack of a better word. But these spice scenes that I wrote in my current work are so fucking twisted for me. Like, I read some of that back and I'm like, where did that come from? Okay. But like, it makes sense for the character, right?
Yeah, right.
So my editor, we share an editor. She's busy like doing her copy edits and she's like, I'm really fucking grossed out, but at the same time, well done, because this is so good for the characters. And I'm just like, the only reprieve I have right now is my mom doesn't read fantasy, because I think if my mom had to read this, she would be like, someone call the ambulance because she's not right in her head kind of thing. To that.
Well, my parents are church leaders. And I love them to bits. And, well, we share a belief, but you have to kind of distance yourself from this isn't a religious story. It is a story about human truth, deep down human truth. And I can't write thinking they're going to read this. I have to write thinking they'll never see this. And now they want to see it.
When you say you have to separate yourself from religion, and I think that's a really good point, because if we look at the fabric of society as a whole, and that could be South Africa, the Netherlands, America, whatnot, religious concepts are built into our day-to-day. My favorite example to use, the Tower of Babel is in the Old Testament, which is the Bible, okay? And it is spoken about in a religious context there, fine. But it does not mean it is a religious concept only. Now, if you go back into the history of it, Mesopotamia is where that started, which is now modern day Iran, Iraq, Persia, that whole part on the map. Doesn't make it religious. It just means it's a part of history. And I think that's where we sometimes get these things confused, because before I stopped reading reviews, a few of my readers were like, "You're talking about religious stuff. I'm surprised by how religious this book is." And I'm like, where? Like, there is fuck all religion in here. You categorize A Beautifully Crafted Lie as a Gothic romance. And I have seen a rise in this subgenre over the years. Why did you feel called to go this direction with your story, when like the romantasy is usually the popular route to go if you have a strong romance plot in your story?
Well, the nice thing about the Gothic genre is because it focuses on darker emotional themes. It's not usually an epic fantasy. Its focus is on character and using the whole setting, atmosphere to draw into the story. So there's a lot of metaphor and simile, and everything is there for a reason. And that is why I was after the genre. It's something that I enjoy reading because I am an introspective reader. So the stories that I write have the same type of outlook.
Joke, write the story that you want to read.
Yes, exactly. And to go back the whole religious thing, just because I write pagan stories, look, you draw yourself into the character and their world and their beliefs and what they would experience. I don't believe you should write only your belief. You should look at the broader spectrum. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck into one narrow little hangiki to reference Afrikaans.
Yeah. It's so true, because and this is my favorite example. If we don't write outside of the things that we know, we would never write about men, because we're not men.
Exactly.
And I mean, both of us have multiple male characters in our story. So yeah, 100% agree with you, because I see so many people going, but I don't want to touch X, Y, Z because I've never experienced it. And I'm like, well, then why do you write about men in your story?
And I think being an author, really, you should be brave in what you write, because you open yourself up to so much judgment that people, if you, for example, as you know, the story that I wrote has got a very spicy chapter in it. I put a little warning up at the top because not everybody enjoys reading spice. Now, some of the ARC readers that I've had praise the fact that, well, thanks for the warning, giving me the opportunity to either skip it or indulge in it. And others don't like it. So you will never satisfy everybody. So I think this is a big thing for us, all of us, to learn, is that you'll never make everyone happy. So at the end of the day, what's the use in trying? You should tell your truth. Even if you use other methods to tell your truth. Neil Gaiman, he has a quote that I like quite a lot, is you use lies to tell the truth. And that is what inspired the whole title of the story, is it's using lies to tell a human truth.
If anyone follows you on social media, a big part of, I almost want to say, your take is you are educating readers on the things that they may not know about being an author, specifically if you're indie, and the hurdles you need to come across. One of those things is you have a very interesting take on spice versus smut and female empowerment and how all those things are meshed together. Why don't you kick us off on that?
I feel like I'm getting a hot flush here. Anyway, I grew up in a culture that is very shame-centered around the whole topic of spice. My mom, for instance, would tell me that it's totally overrated, and you don't speak about things like that. So when I first met my husband, I would write him a message about my needs because I couldn't voice it. And I feel that is actually so tragic. It's something that should change. Just because it is not always culturally acceptable doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So that's the whole thing about romanticy, which I like so much, is it gives us freedom to express ourselves on more ways than one. I think that a story, it doesn't have to have spice, but I don't think it should revolve around it, because then you're missing the point. Our experience isn't just kink. There is a story behind the action. There is an emotion behind it. You should feel free to express yourself. It shouldn't revolve around it, because then the shame culture kicks in from the beginning again. And there's a whole thing about romanticy not being a valid genre because of the spice in it. And that is a border that I think we should be very careful of crossing.
Sex is discussed so openly in Amsterdam. Now, granted, it's not the whole of the Netherlands, because we do share a lot of similarities culture-wise. So the way the Dutch people explain it is that Afrikaans is kind of like old school Dutch that never evolved. And in Amsterdam has evolved a lot in terms of open-mindedness and things like that. Some of the other cities, not so much, but for the purposes of this conversation, we'll focus on Amsterdam. You've heard about the red light district. You can go pay for sex like this. It's not an issue. Those women pay tax, the same amount of tax as I do, by the way. They are protected the way, actually, they get more protection. There is, you call it handhaving, which is like the step before police patrolling the red light district. So it's very safe. But the point is, by making sex accessible to those that want it, that's not an issue. And it's very normal to see a man walking into the red light. That's fine. It's not the end of the world. I remember walking into the one museum, and we didn't realize it was for kids. They have a whole floor dedicated on how they teach kids about gender, and it's age appropriate. They even have one for non-binary, which I was so impressed by. Because their thing is that if you start educating at an age appropriate level, education is kind of half the battle here. Okay. Time for my favorite question of the episode. What's your bookish hot take?
Now, this is turning into a smut talk, actually.
I'm here for it.
Okay, so my hot take is that I don't think that explicit drawings of spicy scenes should be used in book marketing. That shouldn't be the focus of a book. And I see that happening a lot in romanticy, especially, is that they're marketing spicy portraits as this is my book. And I think there's so much more to romance than the act itself. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy reading spice and that I don't enjoy writing spice. I do. But I think that, in my personal opinion, is that in Afrikaans you'd say, jy sit die pot mis. You are missing the point here.
A big theme this season with the guests is that they've been talking a lot about yearning in romance again. Now, personally, as a reader, I couldn't give a fuck about yearning. Okay, that is my opinion. That is my preference. It doesn't mean that is like the law, because I also have the patience of a toddler. However, I'm going to quote Cara from her episode. She said she thinks romance readers are single-handedly holding up the publishing industry right now with their requirements. So it was a really interesting conversation to be had. I'm not talking about, and my favorite example is Lights Out by Nevessa Allen again. Mm-hmm. She markets that as a smutty good time. She's very clear about her expectations. You know exactly what you're going in for. You're reading smut for the fun of it. Now, did I actually have a good time? 100% yes. 5-star immediately, okay? Because the banter was on point. There was actually a really interesting plot worked into there as well, which was a wonderful surprise. Some of the spies, like, I looked at my husband and I was like, my back hurts just reading this. Like, I'm literally trying to figure out, like, Like, you see those reels where like the girls are like trying to get their legs out and like they're trying to do that. And I'm just like, how? I have so many questions about the logistics behind this. But the point is, I'm not talking about readers like Mavessa Allen, where she's very clear and she's very upfront about her marketing and she writes smut. That is her thing.
Which is great. I mean, I have read many of those books and I thoroughly enjoy them. Everybody's got their preference. Everybody's got their style, things that they enjoy. You write what you enjoy reading. I feel that as an author, you should set the expectancy about what they are going to find when they open the book. I tell my ARC readers as well, this is a character-driven story. This is not an epic fantasy going on quests and trials and so forth. The battle is in here. And if you are not expecting that, you're going to miss it. And that is where you get your bad reviews, is people that are reading something that they're not expecting. If you're writing smut, if you're a very spicy story, then your blurb should actually indicate it beforehand. I don't want to pick up a book and expect a romantasy and get a totally different genre.
One of the authors that I've recently helped with her blurb, I don't know what you would call this category, if I'm being honest with you, but it's not fantasy. It's a standard story. I'm so bad when it's not fantasy. I'm just like, I don't know what to call it. It basically talks about suicide and how a mom loses her child during this. And we did a lot of back and forth about her responsibility as an author to disclose these things upfront, because it's not a spoiler. It's like the whole story is built on that kind of thing. So I basically said to her, content warnings aren't really policed in the trad space, as we know. So it's a little bit harder to reference content warnings in the trad thing. You kind of have to defer to indies because we take this really seriously on our side. And we basically ended up with her blurb. So we had the, like the hooks, the breakdown, and then we have the little italics, just the summary of the book. We actually added a content warning at the blurb level, discussions of grief, trauma, death, all those kinds of things. As she just felt like she needed to be extra clear up front as the author about this topic, so that no reader walked in feeling caught unawares about the story. And I thought it was such an admirable thing. She didn't have to, because again, there's no standard to refer to in this case, but she did it out of her own, and I really respected that.
No, definitely. Content warnings do have their place, and it shouldn't be seen as a spoiler. And I know a lot of people are complaining either that there aren't enough content warnings, or that the content warnings are kind of telling them what's going to happen in the story before it happens. So for the darker, deeper type of themes like suicide or non-con, I think there should be a content warning in there, because people might have experienced this in their lives and it can trigger something that's really not pleasant, and they should know what they're getting into.
My favorite example, have you ever read Verity by Colleen Hoover?
No, I haven't. It was on my TBR for a very long time, but I haven't gotten around to it.
There is very little that disturbs me. I don't know what that says about me, but like separate.
No, I'm with you there. Don't worry.
And I've spoken about it on the podcast before. I don't like bullying as a plot device, just purely because I don't understand cruelty for the sake of it. Not, like, oh, it's the villain being cruel. Like, I understand it. That's fine. So my favorite example there is Zodiac Academy. Pissed me off a little bit because of that. But anyway, Verity, I do think it's a good story. I know Colleen Hoover gets a lot of shit from the community, but I think it's a good story, and I will stand by that. But, and this is not a spoiler, you start learning how, I think the author's name, because it's an author, so it's an author, ghost author situation, but she's injured. Or she's like catatonic or something like that. It's been a while, like 2 years since I've read it. And you start discovering how like completely not well the catatonic author is, and the husband and the child and whatever. So the author's there to like finish her manuscript kind of thing. The things that she does, I'm like, what the fuck? Why is there no, and this is a spoiler for anyone that hasn't read it, she tries to give herself an abortion with a coat hanger. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
next level.
Yeah. They actually talk about later. So it was twins, by the way, twin girls. They actually talk about it later how the one twin has like this massive scar on her face when she's born. So it's just things like that is it makes sense to the story. Like, I get it. But a little bit of a heads up would have been nice to everyone that's a mother that reads something like that. That is potentially very disturbing. I want to talk about AI for a second. And this is something you have referenced on your page. And I have loads of thoughts about this. Now, you brought up the topic that being a newer writer, and I say newer because like I know you've written for a while, it's just with a beautifully crafted line being your debut, you were concerned about the AI accusations that you may face because you're not like an established author compared to others. Why don't you talk us through your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that is a scary thing, actually. Let me put it into context. I enjoy drawing as well, as you may know. I did a little test and I drew a portrait of Oren, and I took a picture of it and I searched it in Google, and the result it gave me is, this is likely drawn by AI. Like, what? I spent like 3 days working on it. It's not AI. But Google says it's AI. So
true.
Yeah. Now what do you do? So now I was forced to go have a look in all the ways that I can protect myself from having people say I use AI art. So what watermarks can I add on to this? What filters can I use? What copyright metadata can I attach to this picture so that I can save myself from the accusation of using AI in my creative work? And that's terrifying because you've got to jump through so many hoops just to prove you're human. Remove your M dashes because AI uses M dashes. I'm sorry, Jane Austen didn't use AI. It's trained off human work. And it's difficult to prove that you did not use AI. I was recently enrolled in university for creative writing, and they also say that it's practically impossible to prove that you did not use AI in your essays. It's easier to prove that you didn't because you've got the rule of threes, you've got M dashes, you've got similes and metaphors. But aren't all these things part of creative writing? If you don't save every single draft you write, if you don't type it into Google Docs and track your changes, then somebody along the way can come along and say, oh, but that sounds a lot like AI, and could possibly ruin your reputation because of it.
This whole accusing people of AI thing, unless you have definitive proof, shut the fuck up. That's what I think. Dinah made you the expert. AI has zero fucking space in creative spaces. I'm seeing a lot of newer authors use the arguments of, oh, but I can't afford it. Bitch, do you think I can afford it? I make a plan. Okay?
I can't afford it. I can't.
I was actually talking with someone yesterday about my monthly expenses that go into being an author, and 100% that is a choice that I make. I am not denying that, and that is on me. I made a plan because it was important to me and I prioritized it. Sure, we can debate privilege and whatnot, but I've also spent 20 years building a career in product manager, so it didn't just happen. The product management career is what pays for my author gig, right? So when people go, I can't afford it, and AI just makes it more accessible, run a Kickstarter if you must. Okay, there are many resources available that can help you find the funds. I'm talking to a debut author right now where she's also got some budget limitations, and I gave her some tips and tricks that she could do to do it cheaper without sacrificing on quality, because the way I'm doing it, it isn't the cheapest way. But again, that's my choice. On the flip side, the people that are writing with AI, but they're using, for example, my work to do so, the story that I spent thousands on, I spent months of my life working, creating it. You just think you can take it without my permission and then go make money of it. That is the most entitled, elitist behavior I've ever heard of in my life.
I hate AI. I absolutely hate it. Not only because it damages your ability to actually think and create something, but it ruins the whole industry, because now you don't have readers who trust an author anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have authors who trust publishing companies anymore.
You see what the CEO said recently at Barnes and Noble, that he's open to stocking AI books, and we're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. And what about the whole Shy Girl debacle?
Yeah, so that case was interesting because I was following it because I was like a trad publisher pulling a launch. First of all, they lost thousands by doing that. And my automatic assumption is that they must have had some kind of proof because I don't see them going ahead just with accusations and making business decisions based on that. But Mia Ballard, that's her name. I see she was indie first and then she got picked up trad. The UK book released first, like at the end of last year. And now people are saying it's AI and it was pulled. And I'm just like, that is fucking terrifying.
Yeah. It is terrifying because you think as an author, okay, fantastic. I'm agented. I have got a publishing house backing me. We're doing this. This is like the dream. You launch your first book, trad. It reaches the stores and it's pulled back, and you'll never really have your reputation again.
Stephanie Storm is my pen name. Okay, so fun fact, Storm is actually my legal second name. So there's some truth, I guess. And the reason why I wanted to make sure that that digital footprint didn't connect to my legal name is because once something exists digitally, it is there. You can't, like, it will not disappear. Okay, you just need to know the right search term to find it. And if you Google my legal name in Amsterdam, it's pretty easy to find my address and all those things. So it's also a bit of a safety thing. But this is the number one thing I tell people is that, sure, we love to share our lives online. But once you share it, even the stories that disappear, there's an archive or people can take screenshots or recordings or what, like the lists are endless. Once you put it on the internet, there's no taking it back. There's some tweets from back in the day, you know, when Twitter was still like a big thing. And like there was some tweets under my real name where I'm like, if my employer searched that right now, I would probably be fired immediately because I didn't think. Don't worry, they don't listen to this podcast, so we're good. I think sometimes just a little bit of a, hey, should I post this? Or like, does this fit into my marketing or my strategy as an author? Yes, no. If no, maybe hold back on it. Is not a bad idea.
That's the whole thing about pseudonyms. It gives you a safety net. Because, yeah, you're writing about things, and when you're writing about things, you kind of have to do away with all the stop signs and just go for it. Otherwise, you're not telling your truth. But when you are telling your truth, you're opening yourself to a whole other disaster because you've got to think about your community. You've got to think about all the moms at school who are going to look at you after reading your smutsy. Having a pseudonym gives you that little bit of security. And then you've got a very enthusiastic mom who loves to support you, who's telling all her church friends about the book that her daughter wrote. And I'm like, oh, Mom, please. You're giving me a heart attack. My anxiety medication is not kicked up to this level.
We love a supportive mother. I want to know from you at least one fantasy book that you think deserves way more hype from the Bookstagram community.
I've got quite a long list, but I've got a few right here above my head. And I would say Lady Macbeth from Avery. It's probably one of my favorite Gothic fantasies, and I don't really see that on socials often. And then Holly Black's Book of Night, and it is actually more a contemporary fantasy, but I absolutely love the tropes that she's used in it. It's got the most epic, I would burn the world for her type of vibe to it, which is fantastic. I love her writing, and I know not many people do, but hey, I think she deserves a lot more love.
And I have heard of those two authors before, but not specifically those titles, so I will definitely look into them.
Do.
I want to take it back to a beautifully crafted life for a second. And just kind of on the world that you're creating here, because it's not a standalone. Am I correct?
You are correct. It is the first of a duology with two spin-off novels.
What we see a lot typically in fantasy is I am seeing that duologies are becoming a little bit more popular. And I never know, do I say, okay, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, do it? Do it.
Do it, yeah.
Thank you, that word, or duology. I just say duology because it's a bit easier for me to pronounce. into the side characters taking over and ending up with whole spin-off novels because they're just so fucking awesome. Like, side characters, like, they are the unsung heroes in our stories. Another trend amongst fantasy authors is that they will jump between the fantasy story and the contemporary romance side. My most favorite example there is Rebecca Yarros. We know that writing The Fourth Wings and whatnot of the world very mentally taxing on her, so she kind of breaks it up by jumping between that and a contemporary romance. Do you ever see yourself doing that for your stories? Because I know you got lots in the pipeline.
Oh my goodness, there's so many that I am considering. And yes, I am considering something of that, but more of a psychological thriller type of thing, which kind of draws back to a psychological thriller family situation. Anyway, that is a long topic, but yeah, I do have ideas for that. I've got ideas for paranormal, and I do have ideas for a contemporary fantasy. But those are sitting aside in a notebook and waiting for me to finish the series first.
So when you say a contemporary fantasy, explain it to me like I'm dumb, because I have never heard those two put together like that. So educate me, if no one else, please.
If I'm going to use a example, it would probably be Sarah J. Maas and her Crescent City series. All of the fantasy characters in a real life setup. So it doesn't have a fantasy world. It's a real world with fantasy characters or themes. So what I'm looking at would be, for example, magic within a real world setup.
I'm going to sound really dumb for a second. Why are we not calling it urban anymore? Is urban like the term that we left in the twins? Are we calling it contemporary fantasy now?
Tomatoes, potatoes, tomatoes. I don't.
Okay. So I don't know this. I'm like, have I missed a marketing opportunity? Because I write urban, so I'm just like, maybe I need to start marketing my stuff as contemporary fantasy. You taught me something new. I like that. So, Evelyn, as we start wrapping up, what can you tell us about the world of Evelyn Ash and what we can expect next?
Yeah, well, I am busy working on book 2, the one that follows directly after A Beautifully Crafted Lie. And I'm not going to tell you what the title is now, because that will have to be revealed later. But I already know what the title is going to be, so I'm working on that. And then I am holding back with everything in me not to start writing Leisha's story. Now, you may remember Brenda's sister. I've got her story coming off that one. So, and then I've got a second spin-off, which would be a prequel to A Beautifully Crafted Lie. And then I am finally going to get to that psychological thriller.
So, I still remember when I was reading A Beautifully Crafted Lie, the Gaelic spelling of names. Pronounce some of them. I still remember asking you how to pronounce Leisha, and I mean, now I know it's Leisha because the spelling was just very different. Yeah, you can see I have had like almost zero exposure to the Irish culture, so that was another lesson for me.
That is a problem when you're reading and not listening to it, because same here. My narrators have kindly informed me that I had one or two of the pronunciations wrong as well.
Oh, yeah, shit, because Pagan's Irish. I forgot about that.
And that is why I chose her, is because I want to put value on the language and the culture. I don't want to disrespect it.
Yeah.
Because it is there. Both my narrators are Irish, and I absolutely value their input there, because I am so not Irish. I may have an great grand that came from there, but I mean, that's where it stops.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, so just for the listeners, Ev and I share a female narrator. I chose Pagan for a different reason, because I was so stoked to see that she had South African heritage as well. Have you heard her South African accent? It's brilliant.
It is like brilliant.
The way she flips between it. And I cannot wait until she voices Iris, because like the only brief I gave to her, I was like, pick an American accent. I don't care which one. But I was like, I really wanted to be like that Dexter style narration, that he murdered again. No, no, no. Okay, I'm a terrible narrator, so don't listen to me. But I was like, I was saying to her, like, the opening to Dexter, the original season, I was like, that, do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but okay, if a listener is listening to this episode, they're vibing with you and they want to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Well, I am most active on Instagram,
Okay,
so they can find me there. But all my links are on my website as well. So
cool.
that is the first
Love
place
it.
I reroute them to. Website, Instagram, and
Um,
DMs. I am there.
and if someone wants to support you, what is the best way to do that?
Supporting at the moment, I value just to share a comment, just engaging, because I want to build a community. This is a debut novel. Yes, I have been writing for years, but this is the first one that I'm actually sharing. I love connecting with people who've got the same interests, the same minds, finding my people, because I don't really have that here. I come from a family who doesn't read. I come from an Afrikaans family. I'm not English, so I don't have my people here. I'd like to find my people elsewhere.
I will say, I find that that's a common thing with the book girlies. A lot of us get into the book space because we don't have that in our day to day life. I don't. Most of my friends don't read. Most of my family doesn't read. I don't know where I got this bookworm gene from, but here we are. Evelyn, I have loved speaking to you, and it's always so funny because when you're talking to someone for months on Instagram, you get reminded that this is the first time we're talking face to face.
Right?
And I'm like, it was just such a natural transition, and I'm actually so thrilled to just shine an episode on you and all the work that you're doing and the stories that you're trying to tell us. I am so thrilled that we have you in the author space because we need more authors like you.
Oh, thank you. And it was very nice talking to you as well.